Hi, I'm Tanya Glide, and my talk is called Menopause, Agent of Queerness. And here you've got some contact details for me, various places you can find me. I'll also put them in the chat. So, who am I and why am I doing this? I'm a psychotherapist and counsellor working in London, UK. I'm a postmenopausal, assumed female at birth, genderqueer, bisexual person. I work mainly with GSRD identified clients. I trained in somatic sexology, although my therapy work is talk-based only. So why did I focus on LGBTQ experiences of menopause in my research? As well as a therapist, I'm also an author. I did a counselling and psychotherapy master's at the University of East London a couple of years ago. I chose this subject because conversations with queer and non-binary friends made me realize just how confused people were and how much they were struggling with their own minds and bodies, their identities, their hormones, whether endogenous, already in the body, or exogenous, put into the body. Before I started my study, I looked around and I found some studies of lesbians and some studies comparing the menopause experiences of heterosexual, lesbian, and bisexual women. So far, so good, but there wasn't very much, and there was almost nothing on any other part of this subject. The journals were silent. My research was finally published. My peer-reviewed research was published in February this year and is available open access until the end of May. So grab it while you can. And of course, menopause intersects with other identities, but my focus here is largely on the aging-related and aging-connected aspects of it. Of course, menopause is not, in fact, always tied to middle age and aging, despite the way it's portrayed in the media. Menopause and menopause-like effects can occur at any age. One thing I've noticed in this process is that to speak publicly about menopause is to admit that the aging process exists. And this may bring a mixed response. As you sit here today, it's worth checking in with yourself on how you feel about age and aging, whatever age you are. It can bring mixed feelings, and I invite you to hold them lightly. So what is queerness? I'll just give you a note on this. I'm aware that due to its historical use at times, not everyone loves the word. And not everyone loves today's expansive usage of it. And also some have a strong feeling of having been born this way and knew who they were from their first conscious thought, and may feel that those who evolve or discover themselves later in life are somehow arrivistes, and that freely used concepts of queering may somehow dilute that identity. But for many, though, queerness is firmly grounded as a disrupting or denormalizing force. It speaks to same-sex intimacy, reshaping and refiguring gender norms, and otherwise questioning binaries. What is menopause? Menopause, at its simplest, is a hormonal transition. Just for clarity, all bodies may experience some form of hormonal transition in mid to later life. I'm going to start, though, with the most common form of menopause as we hear about it, and that's what some may call the natural menopause, and I'm aware of the fragility of that word. This menopause occurs in people born with ovaries. Somewhere in middle-ish age, but can be younger, the body's estrogen production starts to fluctuate and eventually reduce. Other hormones too. This period of time is called perimenopause. Eventually, menstruation may become irregular and stops. When menstruation has stopped for a year or more, the person is finally in menopause, and then, kind of the next day, they're instantly postmenopausal. You may have heard the age of 50 thrown around as the average age for menstruation to stop. Actually, it can happen a lot earlier or later, and perimenopause can last up to 10 years or more. Unfortunately, this long phase, or what can be long, perimenopause, is the thing that lots of people are still experiencing while having no idea what it is. It's easy when you're younger to think that hot flushes and night sweats will never happen to you, and then be shocked when they do. Looking back a generation or two, though, menopause for many looked like a process of eradication due to the awful, sexless monster that it apparently turned people into. There are other ways a person can experience menopause. If someone had their ovaries removed at any age for any reason, including as a teenager, someone could have POI, premature ovarian insufficiency. Someone could have had chemotherapy. And menopause is also biopsychosocial. So for people who take exogenous hormones, for example, there may be menopause-like experiences. For a transmasculine person, lowering the estrogen in the body may bring on these symptoms and side effects. For a transfeminine person, having to come off supplemental estrogen, for example, in order to have surgery, will also bring on similar symptoms. While my main focus today is the intersection of menopause and aging, much more needs to be done to support younger people who experience early menopause or POI, for whom the aging narrative may feel irrelevant and alienating. There's someone I know of on Twitter who went into menopause at 14. This group are not being told about menopause or that they could take supplemental hormones. Some of them are, but lots aren't. And they're often overlooked in public campaigns. So how does menopause impact people? I've split this into several groups. These effects can happen in perimenopause and go on into postmenopause. Some people will experience almost nothing, most will have some, and some people will have their lives turned upside down. So we have mental health, insomnia, anxiety, depression, mood swings, and irritability and rage. Physical health, hot flushes, sweating and night sweats, tingling hands and feet, chronic pain, eczema, itching and skin dryness, hair loss, unusual hair growth, weight gain. Cognitive capacity effects, brain fog, trouble with word finding and memory loss. And gynecological and sexual health. If still having periods, increasingly irregular in all sorts of ways with long periods between them, or very heavy bleeding. Some people have so heavy they can't leave the house. So a huge range of things. Then we have, of course, the genitourinary symptoms of menopause, or GSM. Previously, you might have heard them called vaginal atrophy. Yep, till recently, people were being told they had that. It's the thinning and drying of the vaginal, urethral, and other surrounding tissue, making, for example, penetration, including medical exams, painful or impossible. The pain can reach a point where perhaps someone's in such pain they can't sit down. Urinary tract infections become more frequent and the likelihood of stress incontinence increases. It can also cause increased odor as the vagina becomes more alkaline and bacterial vaginosis becomes more prevalent. And then there's lowered libido, or none where there was libido previously. And of course, it's also important to take a global view of these effects, the effects these have on what's also going on for the person. Any of them or a combination of them can have a compound effect on mental health and sexual self-confidence. They also may bring a lot of shame, internalized ageism, and internalized ableism. They can also exacerbate some existing health conditions, particularly in terms of mental health and PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. Longer term, as a result of low estrogen, someone may experience osteoporosis or brittle bones, stroke, heart disease, and dementia. In terms of mental health, menopause may dovetail with existing life challenges and also existing trauma. If you're already on the edge mentally and physically, and your health is bad and you cannot sleep, everything will seem worse and sometimes become worse. Doubly so if you're impacted by racism, misogyny, homophobia, biphobia, transphobia, or ableism, or anything else. And these impacts may also intersect with neurodivergence, as well as instigate neurodivergence of its own. And that's something that's quite a new field, but something I'm very interested in. Once you've properly reached postmenopause, you are infertile. Many experience grief at the end of menstruation at the same time as a lot of relief. It's complex. Some women, for example, feel they've lost their femininity or even their sense of being a woman at all. This is negative for some and highly positive for others. But I can't say everything's terrible. People also report an improved life once they're through it and a welcome change in priority, along with a sense of freedom from some social pressures. Many people are happy to see the end of their periods and report an improved sex life and libido. There are as many different responses to menopause as there are people. However, as current information is so patchy, treatment so politically loaded, attitudes so binary, and so many people clearly struggling, I remain focused on the challenges of menopause and its impact on people. Menopause in the media and society. Responses to menopause in public life, which generally center around how cis-het women are supposedly feeling about it, and often middle class or prominent cis-het women, are generally focused on physical appearance, capacity to have penis and vagina sex, and general ability to please men visually and sexually. Obviously, there is a lot more that's talked about, but those things have a heavy focus. Conversely, there's also a narrative of repulsion with imagery of things being rotten, faded, and also pantomimic or comical. And I'll just show you the trope of the rotting flower, which can pop up in lifestyle journalism or in scientific articles, a bit like this one. The idea that time is now very overtly the enemy informs a lot of menopause media output and marketing, focusing on getting frightened people, particularly women, to spend money on beauty treatments and wellness products. Also on private doctors, as the NHS in the UK is still sadly failing a number of people in this regard. There is a sense of resources somehow being withheld, and the UK actually has had a shortage of hormone replacement therapy medications for a couple of years now. As menopause is so overwhelmingly associated with cishet women, misogyny and ageism go hand in hand here. Ageism in mainstream media means older women are seen as redundant. There is an obsession with youth. There is a brutal self-repulsed humor, often from within the menopause community itself. Now, I do just need to say that it's really important to note that the extreme focus on the white, European, Western, Anglo, middle class, well-resourced and medicalized experience of menopause, we need to hear many other stories. There are increasing number of stories being told and studies being done, but the global story is not even close to being told. Here's our friend the flower, the trope. The politics of menopause treatment. Now, many people take what has been known as HRT, hormone replacement therapy, which is usually estrogen and progesterone if the person still has their womb. This acronym is being replaced by MHT, menopausal hormone therapy, which is preferable so as not to confuse this with other treatments. Many people report being helped, sometimes very rapidly, by taking hormones. There are some risks, but there is contention around them really on all sides due to certain studies from the past and due to gatekeeping around these studies. There's so much to say on this. There is a huge and scandalous variation in what doctors are offering people in menopause. Some patients have to fight to get help. Others will find they're having antidepressants pushed at them rather than hormones. Still others are patted on the head and told it's natural, that word again, and they should just put up with it. All these are signs of the erasure of middle-aged and older people, and also of infertile people, if younger. People who have their ovaries removed at any age will go into menopause quickly, and as I said, are still not having what will happen explained to them beforehand. It can be even more thorny when someone's seeking testosterone for menopause. Things are changing, but not fast enough, and there are campaigns ongoing in the UK. Now, of course, all of this also applies to trans, non-binary and gender expansive people when seeking hormones, who often experience far more difficulty than a cis person does. So it's altogether a murky area. I just want to say a word on the non-gendered nature of hormones. Prescribing testosterone to everyone apart from cis men is still a vexed issue. There is a move towards standardizing it in the UK, I think around the world. But I have to say that our gender binary world has duped us all. It's really important to know that hormones are not gendered. Despite what endless media nonsense is said about it, all bodies need them to function, and there is a huge withholding of information, and it contributes to silencing, confusion, and consequent gaslighting of patients, and people not seeking the treatment that would really help them for all kinds of reasons. And here's my message that I will continue to go on about. There is a world of people whose experiences are not being acknowledged in the media and in the medical establishment. Menopause happens to cis women, trans men, non-binary and intersex people. So the LGBTQ+ experience of menopause, is there an advantage? And I would say, yes, in many ways there is. It may be a protective factor. For example, being less attached to the idea of fertility and giving birth. The absence of needing to please cis men through youthful appearance, slimness, and conventional sexual availability. more immunity to bullshit beauty standards, or BS, fewer escalator relationships, and more expansive notions about what relationships are and could be. Having more expansive forms and definitions of sex, for example, without the focus on PIV, means that bodily changes can be worked around more easily. There seems to be a higher incidence of and awareness of disability and physical and mental health issues among the LGBTQ+ population, both when younger and older. Awareness of this may be protective when menopause symptoms come around. Some queer people have thus had time to work on internalized ableism and ageism. And then, of course, a sense of community. People feeling more ready to share issues of sexuality, the body, somatics, gender, etc. Or it becoming more normalized to share those things. But of course, enter my study, LGBTQ menopause, there is also a queer disadvantage. There is a long way to go when a patient is both menopausal and LGBTQ+. People experienced endless assumptions and disrespectful experiences with doctors, ranging from annoying to actively traumatic. Asexual people may feel gaslighted by the endless assumptions that they're either lying to themselves or others, or need to just find the right person. And the theme of wrong assumptions was huge across my study. LGBTQ+ people, particularly trans and non-binary people, may already avoid interacting with mainstream healthcare because of the fear of having to explain themselves over and over. At worst, this means many may be missing out on support and treatments. No one wants to keep explaining about who they have sex with, the fact that there's no way they could, for example, be pregnant, and the nature of their genitals. And I'm not exaggerating. One of my major outcomes was that poor training means the situation is just not changing fast enough, and it's needed everywhere. Doctors, healthcare people, therapists, you name it. I will just note the double gatekeeper issue. If someone is starting menopause or perimenopause while considering gender transition, they may need to perform for 2 sets of gatekeepers in order to get help and medication, if they're seeking it. The GP, who they fear, may, if they ask for testosterone for menopause, send them to the gender clinic and not give it to them. And also fearing that the gender clinic, where if they mention menopause, may consider them not trans enough. And this brings up huge conflicts and complications. And this is from my study. Queer menopausal clients frequently face multiple discrimination when accessing therapy and healthcare services. Practitioners of all kinds, and by extension training organizations, have a long way to go in creating sufficiently safe and appropriate services for this client group. Aging, sex, pleasure, and identity. I can't talk about these intersections with menopause without talking about and condemning really terrible mainstream sex education and sex and relationships education. It could be easy to say once we get to middle age that we know what we need to know about sexuality and gender, our own sexuality and gender, and the kind of sex we like. I get that folks in this audience are likely to know more than the average, but it's very clear from the abundance of Instagram activist accounts, workshops, and books that in the mainstream population, this is not even remotely true. In queer and kink community, you may find exploration beyond the gender binary and imagination beyond the escalator. But if you're not in this world, those worlds, you're going to have to seek them out. As you know, we've barely begun to teach intimate negotiation and pleasure. And I'm now giving major side eye to the medical establishment and therapeutic establishment here. It disturbs me that so many trainings and information portals still refer to female sexual dysfunction, FSD. Please bin this right now. This failure of sex and gender education also means that many may have spent their lives enacting sex in ways they do not find pleasurable. They're out of consent with people they don't even desire. And they may, well, they are having sex when they don't want it at all. But I have to say, when you're feeling burned by menopause, by ageist microaggressions, by assumptions, and by non-consensual pain in your body, it can be hard to remember that pleasure exists and this is still available to you. Of course, on the other hand, after coming out of the other side, some will find liberation, but it can be hard won. So how does someone adapt to their changing body and changing energy levels? First of all, remember, if you used to have sex, choosing not to have sex anymore is an extremely valid choice. Simply reflecting on what you want from sex and from your body may start you on a journey of evolving sexuality and evolving gender. What you loved once may now be alienating to you. For people with vaginas, penetration can become very painful as the walls of the vagina and vulval area become thinner and drier. This may be a relief to many if PIV or any penetration was not something you enjoyed, but just went along with. Menopause can provide a path to escape sexual habits you fell into and could not figure out how to change. Obviously, how that affects relationships is a whole other piece. Our perceptions change as we age, sight, hearing, smell, and the body. One study found that our interoception declines with age, i.e. how we perceive what's going on inside us. And this is another place where more somatic research would be helpful. If you're experiencing painful joints and stiffness, if you are into position sex, you will need to adapt. However, if you have a partner who insists on particular kinds of sex, menopause may be your key to freeing yourself from them if they make this conditional on staying in a relationship with you. And if you have existing conditions or disabilities, there may be further negotiation with yourself to do. Evolving sexuality, evolving gender. I think we're all aware of a number of writings and all sorts of output where a straight woman or a previously known as straight woman has stopped dating men and begun to date women. There are a number of stories of people, and obviously also straight men, or men who were living as previously straight. People who ticked the escalator boxes and then realized this was not for them anymore. And those narratives have already been talked about, and they're becoming talked about more, particularly women have been talking for a while, men more. But of course, across all genders, I think people feel shifts in their perceptions and their attractions. This needs more study. That's really what this is about, this bit's about. It just needs more study. I mean, for people previously living as cis, experiencing a kind of regendering, as I've heard it called, when in menopause, there is less data. I mean, I've got to say there's hardly any at all, somatic data, if you like. And again, it needs further study. I think it's important. And there are lots of layers to this. I have no time to unpick all this now. I'm just chucking some ideas out here. Sometimes people in menopause report feeling they've returned to a much younger self, a child self. And just to bring my own experience into it, I have felt like I was 10 again, in a kind of sense of pre-sexuality and pre-gender, as if everything was up for grabs. And gender has taken on a very different meaning for me, and woman does not feel right. But the more I reflect on this, the more I wonder if it ever did. And then I was also one of those kids who felt like an alien, and I didn't have words for this. So that's a piece I'm working on. That's a piece I can't tell you the outcome yet. Ways to self-resource. And I'm also obviously thinking of clients in everything I've been saying here and what I'm thinking here. So there's ourselves, there's you, and there's also our clients. I like to think of our locus of self-awareness as a kind of flexible envelope that goes around our physical body. This envelope may expand so far outward that we're not sure what our boundaries are, or it may contract like a fitted bodysuit and allow us little movement. This may feel holding and secure, but it also may feel tight and restricting. And there's something to focus on there, sort of somatic work, self-somatic work. You may be done with being touched for someone else's pleasure, but not your own. You may be delighted to stop having sex, and that is totally okay. It's also totally okay to decide you're done with what you were doing and want to just have a whole load more. So if you are seeking to keep sexual pleasure in your life and have greater pleasure, but are not sure how, what I offer here are thought starters. Be mindful of your own trauma here. Any of this might be solo, or with a partner or partners. Breathing and breath work, non-sexual physical touch, non-penetration, energy sex, anal sex, the intersection of pleasure and strong sensation, power exchange and role play, voyeurism and exhibitionism, or opening a previously monogamous relationship. Thought starters, opportunities for play. And there's something, again, goes back to the sense of childhood and play. And to ask yourself, to ask your clients, what would it be like to explore yourself? And you may not have felt a sense of entitlement to pleasure in your previous life. And I mean entitlement in a positive way. And now is a time to re-examine that. And of course, seek out community. Find your people. So menopause can be seen as a potent symbol of time passing. It both takes and gives in that respect. It's part of aging, but is not the whole of it. Getting older forces you to focus on certain things more than before. Health and money come to mind. However, these harder aspects are balanced by the idea of giving no fucks elsewhere. Again, there will be causes and people and things and all kinds of things that you believe in increasingly strongly and will fight for. But sometimes there's the sense that the rest can just burn. And I think for many people, there's something liberating there. Some say that time can be queered. Time is queered, like anything else. Queer life, for example, in the way people may find alternatives to the relationship and sex escalators that I've described, slows down or speeds up mainstream existence. There's been quite a lot of writing on this. And when we reach a certain age, we may find ourselves able to reflect on the time we've already survived, but also on how much time we have left. Knowing you have a limited time to live may spur you on to further exploration or further acceptance, or establishing aspects of yourself you'd only dreamed of before. And lest I sound too individualistic, if you didn't have it before, you may also seek and find a community. So we must adapt to menopause, but somehow these adaptations may also be queer in nature. Now, I'm not trying to say, hey, everyone's queer really, which is a bit like saying everyone's bi. I just mean that in menopause, we may find a number of pressures, such as compulsory heterosexuality and cisnormativity, lifted from us. It can help to take a phenomenological approach, to lift away and discard our previous assumptions, what we did and who we were told we were. We may find ourselves surprised. As you come through menopause, you may need to take time to grieve whatever you need to grieve. There is no shame in needing this time, but what you're grieving may be societal as much as personal. You may grieve the acceptance that youth brings, but also grieve what you were told was your normality, that you spent so much time within, when it in fact was someone else's version that was put on you. It was BS, but at the time it was your BS. And there's no shame in taking some time to unwrap yourself from these bonds. So if queering also means doing things differently and stepping away from the normative paths you were on to go in a new direction, then we can say that menopause offers us this. It offers us opportunities to change, stretch, or even confirm who we really are. Thank you. And just 2 reference pages. If you want to photograph them, I also have these links at my website, my research, my queermenopause.com site, Heather Corinna's forthcoming Inclusive Menopause book, which I am quoted in, but it's excellent. And the 3 articles that I found closest to my subject in my research. Thank you.